If you guys will join me in welcoming our next speaker, she is an LCSW in Maryville, Tennessee, and she trains and mentors young psychotherapists in acceptance and integration training. So if you'll welcome me and join me in welcoming Melanie McGhee.
So does it sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Melanie McGhee, and this morning we're going to be exploring untethering from the charged energy associated with trauma and returning to now. So we all know that trauma gets triggered by any number of problems or situations that happen. I have a client who 20 years ago was a victim of gunshot violence, and she, for almost 20 years, every time the season changed, every time the weather turned, she was again on alert. If a car backfired, she started looking around for guns in any kind of, office environment, hotel, emergency unit, wherever she was looking around for guns, and it happened all the time. So she missed out on fall. She missed out on the beauty of walking in the woods. She missed out on the crunch of leaves. She missed out on the crystalline skies that we experience here. She went into this automatic fight, flight, or freeze response that's associated with trauma. And her past became her present, no matter what was going on around her. And within one session, using this approach that I'm going to be sharing with you today, she texted me and said, in this issue, she not only enjoys fall now, but she enjoys fireworks, which was never happening. She wasn't able to experience any pleasure or joy with fireworks. And so not only now is she able to enjoy the autumn, she's able to enjoy life a little more fully without walking around on the verge of panic, waiting for some gun to emerge. And we all want this for our clients. This is no surprise. We want this. What's shocking to me, even still doing this work, that something that's been challenging for a client for close to 20 years can be resolved in a single session. That's still shocking to me, and I want that for all of our clients. So let's talk about a little bit about where we're going here. We want to come to having a shared understanding of trauma, just to give you just a jumping off point. I'll give you a brief introduction to acceptance and integration training. I'll do a demonstration of the work that I just described with the client I told you about. We'll have some time for Q&A. And then I'm going to share a couple of processes, a couple of easy ways to help our clients reorient to the present, which is one of the most challenging things for people who journey with anxiety or journey with PTSD, is reorienting to now. It's a challenging thing for them to do, for all of us really. And full disclosure, my students and I offer training in acceptance and integration training, so that's just disclosure for you guys. 90% of our clients who show up in any kind of behavioral health care setting have experienced trauma. 51% of those are female and 61% are male, which that can't be math. That's not right math. So I'll have to check that figure. That doesn't add up. So again, I'm a social worker. I'm not an accountant, not a mathematician. What I can tell you is, according to SAMHSA, 90% of our clients show up with some kind of trauma. So enjoy the graphic, because I was playing and learning how to use Excel. But what is trauma? According to the AAIT, trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event like an accident, rape, or a natural disaster. And we know too that trauma, we have microaggressions that are trauma, and we have single incident traumas. And operationally, what this looks like for us as practitioners is that there's charged energy. There's bound energy associated with the trigger and the trauma. There's the energy of a thought, an image, an emotion, or sensation. And those come unbidden but onto our clients' experiences, and that tangles them in that charged energy. So again, this charged energy associated with trauma are thoughts, images, emotions, and sensations. and they bind us. It's like they entangle us with these experiences and really limit our freedom, limit the freedom of movement, the freedom of choices. So what happens is that we are making choices that are bound to that triggered, charged response. And we don't have the spaciousness of being to make a clearer choice. Our choices are filtered through that traumatic experience. So when we can untether our clients from this charged energy, they experience the space that Viktor Frankl alludes to, the space between stimulus and response. It really does become like a moment, a breath of air, an internal spaciousness. So what happens is that previous trigger, the weather turns, you see a leaf fall, you see the reflection of a tree on the water, those no longer trigger that, they no longer entangle in the charged energy associated with the trauma once the individual is free from that charge. Then they have the freedom to make a choice that's typically more in alignment with who they really are and not bound to the tension of fear associated with their previous experiences. So with AAIT, we really do take a bi-directional approach to addressing trauma, but really it's more like a tripod. It's more like a strong, solid, three-legged stool. The first aspect of this is we are addressing the reactive charge associated with trauma. And all of us do that to some extent. We address the reactive charge, and we do this by neutralizing that charge through integration. And I'll come back to that in just a little while. We also work to help our clients move so where there's reactive, proactive, and stabilization. So reactive is we're untethering from the charged energy associated with the trauma. Proactive is we're helping our clients instill states of being and inner strength and resources that will help them improve their capacity for self-regulation and will also help them increase their sense of resiliency by being able to access and stabilize in more steady states of being. The third aspect of this work, which is there's a couple of ways that things that set acceptance and integration training apart from other modalities of care. And one of them has to do with this aspect, stabilization. Because what we're doing there is we're securing sustainable change in our clients by paying rigorous attention to making sure that they don't think that the trauma can impose itself on them in the future against their will. We look at addressing the situation from a holistic perspective. So sometimes that means taking other points of view associated with the trauma. Occasionally that's the point of view of the perpetrator, but not frequently and not often. It's often more other things and other beings who are associated with the trauma. And then we also stabilize that by expanding positive states of being. And one of those states might be the state of forgiveness. If the client feels the need for the state, need for forgiveness, it's very apparent when you've done a complete piece of work, there's either a need for forgiveness or there's not. And living where we live and with spirituality being important to many of our clients, just simply asking them if they feel a need for forgiveness is really telling. Not that there's any should, but when that need comes up and we allow it, that feeling of forgiveness is really evident, and then it can expand more naturally to include anyone associated with their traumatic experience. Okay, so just to talk about stabilization for a minute. These are the ways that we go through stabilization with our clients once they've released the tension associated with the trauma. The first thing is we check on the problem. How does the problem feel to them? How does the traumatic experience seem to them after the work that they've done? That'll give us a clear indication of if the work is really satisfying, if it's going to hold for them. Then we clear the future. And this is one way that one of the areas that makes acceptance and integration training a little different from some of the other models of care, because what we're doing is asking our client, is it possible that the triggers or the things that bothered you about that trauma could impose themselves on you in the future against your will? And when the client says yes, fine, no problem. We just know we have a little more digging to do. We want to get all of the roots of the problem out, not just them walking out of our office feeling good that one time. We want them to be able to text us, hey, I'm enjoying fall. Did you catch those fireworks? That was pretty awesome. IW. We want that for our clients. And so when we check on the future and clear the future for them using some integration methods, it really does help them orient more to the present moment rather than the past. We also direct awareness to the body and their inner state. The body won't lie. You do a good piece of work and the body feels calm and steady and at ease. If there's still a little tingling, a little niggling tension associated with their traumatic experience, the body will tell you that. And so they will make sure that we address the body too. Let me expand. Okay. Then I mentioned this earlier. We'll always ask if there's a need for forgiveness. And it's either an obvious yes or an obvious no. When you've done a piece of work and you've cleared away tangled tension and you ask this question, it's so interesting because the person feels it. It's like I'm thirsty. It feels like that kind of need. It doesn't feel like an imposed need. It feels like, oh yeah, I'm thirsty. And the water's right there, the forgiveness is right there, so that people are able to access and align with the healing properties of that more readily. And then another piece we use for stabilization is called holistic processing, and I mentioned this, where we'll go to multiple points of view associated with any given experience. So, acceptance and integration training, it's built on some of you know my husband, David Patterson. He teaches at the University in College of Social Work. And David is very precise in his language and very much a scholar, and I am very much a practitioner. And we've been talking about this work for many years because the model has been developing for the last 10 years or so. And at one point, a few years back, David asked me, so what's the theory of this acceptance and integration training thing? I was so proud of myself. I thought, man, I nailed it. I said it's simple. Acceptance plus integration equals freedom. He looked at me like you guys are, a little bit. He looked at me like, oh, that's a cute little theory you got going on over there. And David's the first feminist I ever knew, so I was a little taken aback by his, that's so cute, that theory. So after lots of conversation and lots of discussion, this is David's interpretation of the theory, which is really probably more accurate. Psychological and interpersonal distress can be attenuated and remediated through a process of acceptance and integration of associated energetic polarities driving the distress. Right? Acceptance plus integration equals freedom. So what he's saying here is that another element that makes this model a little different is that we're using the integration of opposites, integration of psychological opposites. So again, the psychological and interpersonal distress can be attenuated and remediated through a process of acceptance and integration of energetic polarities driving the distress. That fundamentally changes the game because we're not looking to the narrative to unravel the distress. We're looking for the tension between opposites. The second part of the theory is such integration results in greater acceptance of self, others, and situations. The integration process produces an increased sense of freedom and ability to make skillful choices in response to previously problematic triggering events. And what that's about is what I said earlier. Once we resolve the issue, we're no longer triggered. There's nothing to entangle to. And finally, integration methods are learned and perpetuated by training and ongoing practices of the procedures. In this approach, we are empowering our clients by giving them particular protocols to use at home as part of their embodiment practice at home. And in this way, they really begin taking responsibility for their own state and tending to it with more grace and more awareness. And what I'm finding, and what my students find, is that clients are more readily to engage in this kind of practice. We all kind of do some version of homework. What I find and I've been practicing since '84, so a while, but what we find is that people who are engaging in these processes at home do it more readily because it works. It's like they feel bad, they do something, 10 minutes later they feel better, and that's very compelling to them, to have that kind of freedom to create an inner state that's more satisfying. I still like acceptance plus integration equals freedom, because that's really, as a clinician, that's what I'm looking for, right? How many of you have heard of kintsugi? Are any of you familiar with kintsugi? Yes, kintsugi it's a beautiful Japanese art, the art of precious stars. And with acceptance and integration training, what we're doing is we create a crucible for transformation. Our clients come to us feeling somewhat broken. Heck, we feel somewhat broken sometimes. And within this crucible, if we think about acceptance as sort of the epoxy that holds the broken pieces together, and the gold is like integration. It's the integration methods that we use. And the bowl itself becomes this crucible. And the crucible is made up of principles and phases and these two ideas, acceptance and integration. So acceptance is pretty easy to understand. Most of us are familiar with acceptance-based modalities of care. Integration is a little more unfamiliar to people, and it's the merging and neutralization of the charged tension associated with some pain, and that creates an environment for thriving, regardless of how dry the soil. When we're in this place, we have the environment for thriving. And Merriam-Webster describes integration as the combining and coordinating of separate parts into a unified whole. Now, if our clients had the language, they would probably tell us, and some of them do, I just want to feel more whole. I want to feel less broken. I want to feel okay in myself. And integration, when we're able to integrate all aspects of our being, all aspects of our experience, we tend to feel more integrated. We tend to feel more whole. So AAIT, or Acceptance and Integration Training, has 5 phases and 6 principles, and we're going to talk about 2 of the principles today, but we do have 5 phases. The first is discovery, and that's what's most familiar probably to most of you, where we're gathering information and synthesizing that information, listening for the charged tension and the charged polarity. One of my students said recently that he felt like a good bit of his training had trained him to get parked in discovery. Any of you ever feel like that? Like you just get parked in discovery and you spend the whole session like discovering, but it doesn't really go anywhere, it's just discovering. So with discovery, we move on to collaborative agreement. And collaborative agreement comes from, I had master teachers. I was really lucky in my early years as a psychotherapist. 2 of my teachers graduating from school told me that if I really wanted to master therapy, I needed to find masters and study with them. So that's what I did, and that's what I'm still doing. I'm only 60, but I'm still doing it. So it's lifelong learning to really take us and take our clients to places we can't even predict right now. So collaborative agreement comes from one of my teachers, Mary Goulding. Bob and Mary Goulding were the founders of redecision therapy. They were trained by Eric Byrne, and pretty famous in the TA world and the transactional analysis world. And Mary particularly was masterful at contracting for change, masterful at helping people get crystal clear on what is it they're going to change, coming to agreement about that change, and going to work and creating change within a single session. So that idea of really every session contracting for change, collaborating with my client, and when we have that agreement that we enter a strong collaborative relationship with our client, it's like we're walking on the trail together. One of us is not ahead, we're just walking together, and we know how to go at this by supporting our clients through this. So the third part is integration, which we keep talking about, and I'll come back to. And then embodiment. I mentioned that a little bit. Embodiment are some of the home practice suggestions that we give clients to help them engage in daily practice so that they can completely unravel from charged tension that's inhibiting their sense of satisfaction as they move through life. Because we all encounter stressors. It's pretty simple. If we brush our teeth every day, few of us left the house today without brushing our teeth. But so many of us go to bed with our hearts cluttered with tension, from the regrets of the day, the disappointments, resentments, and the stressors that we have coming up. So we teach our clients how to address these regrets, resentments, stressors that they have in their life. And finally, directed awareness. And this is, I think, also where this work gets interesting, because with directed awareness, we're primarily focusing on 3 areas. We're directing our clients' awareness to their body, as I mentioned earlier. We're directing our clients' awareness to transcendent or expanded states of being. The reason that that's important is that, and you may have come across this already yourself, you know this, that our clients sometimes are not really comfortable in expanded states or steady states. They're not really, it makes them uncomfortable to feel at ease. They're waiting for the next shoe to drop. And so any kind of steadiness or peace feels it immediately gets entangled with a sense of anxiety. So we address that with directing awareness to that state and then working with any tension that's arising there. And finally, we direct our awareness back to the previous problem. Because one of the things that happens is that it's a little shocking when you have a problem removed. It doesn't happen so much with trauma, because trauma is a little different. But with other problems, people forget they had the problem. Like they honestly forget that feeling irritated with my husband when he gets irritated with me was ever a problem. They just forget it. But when you go back the next session and direct awareness to, let's check on that work you did, because we want to make sure that what we collaboratively agreed to do actually resolved. So we go back and direct awareness to the previous problem, and it's either resolved or it's not resolved, and then we work from there. Most frequently it's resolved, and we move on. So I mentioned that there are 6 principles associated with acceptance and integration training, and you're welcome to email me, and I'm happy to send those to you. We've got a little poster. I realize my email is not on the list, so it's Melanie at AAIT.solutions, if you want that. Melanie at AAIT.solutions. I'll send you a little poster if you want of the other principles. So I wanted to focus on these 2 because these are 2 of the principles that sort of makes this work a little more unique than what you may be familiar with. And so I thought it might be more valuable for you to be exposed to something a little different from what you're used to. So the principle is the integration of 2 opposing states can alleviate psychological suffering. We live in a world of duality. Up, down, right, left, inside, outside, man, woman, happy, sad, angry, calm. The same things going on psychologically. And when we can discern and unravel the tension and neutralize the tension between polarized opposites, we can create a steadier sense of peace and well-being for our clients. The other principle is the non-dual states of empty consciousness are an indication and mechanism of transformation. How many of you have heard of non-dual consciousness or non-dual awareness? Yeah, it's a kind of unfamiliar term to most of us. So I want to spend a little bit of time here and talk about this principle and particularly what it means for us as practitioners. When I was at the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference a couple of years ago, and Ernest Rossi was presenting this work that also has foundations in hypnosis. I was Ericksonian trained. And Ernest Rossi was presenting. He was a student of Milton Erickson's. And he was talking about how 50 years ago, hypnosis was not something that was in the mainstream. It was very suspect in the clinical room. And so we didn't do a lot of it. And in fact, when I moved here 20 years ago, or since 1991, I wasn't really out about practicing hypnosis because it wasn't really accepted. It wasn't really accepted as a valuable way of helping people. So Ernst said that 50 years ago it was hypnosis, 20 to 25 years ago it was meditation. How many of you talk to your clients now about meditation? Right? And so then mindfulness came into focus, and now there's mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. So not only is meditation a part of therapy for many of us, it's the focus. So 20 years ago, mindfulness was suspect. And then Ernest said, now where we are on the frontier of our collective profession is in the territory of non-dual awareness. That's the next frontier. I was shocked because I've presented at a couple of conferences. I presented at the American Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, and I was one of 3 presenters on non-dual awareness. And that was shocking. So it's happening, even though it's unfamiliar. So let me talk about what non-dual awareness is. Operationally, what it means is it's a state of awareness that's empty of any thought, it's empty of any image, it's empty of any emotion and body sensation other than present awareness. Feel the coolness of the air, feet on the floor. So non-dual awareness is entirely different than their charged energy. It's evident. You feel one thing that's all charged and tangled, and then there's nothing there. There's no thought, image, emotion, or sensation. For some people, that's very unsettling, so we address that because that state mirrors the state of peace. It mirrors the state of calm. It's a little more expanded. So another way of thinking about non-dualism, non-dual, is it's all variety of things are manifestations of one thing. Now in pop psychology, we find in our popular culture, we're reading more and hearing more people talk about oneness, a sense of oneness, and people going on retreat to experience oneness. And what I invite you to consider is that little moments we can have that experience through the integration of psychological opposites, and then become more and more steady in those states of being. We will have time for questions and answers, so I want to, if you have questions, just keep them in mind. So one of my teachers, I've been studying with Živorad Slavinsky. He's a psychologist in Belgrade, Serbia. And I met Živorad in 2006 and have been studying with him since. When a friend of mine invited me to a presentation he was giving, a workshop he was giving in Louisville, Kentucky. And I wasn't very interested, frankly. I'd kind of given up. My mentor had died in the early mid-90s, and I tried a few other people. I trained with other people, Gary Craig and Marshall Rosenberg, and I loved those guys, but I hadn't found a mentor, and I'd kind of like, okay, I'll get my CUs and move on, And my friend said, no, you really need to see this guy. It's like EFT on steroids. And this was, many years ago before EFT, and I trained with Gary Craig, so it was many years ago before EFT was kind of common, an emotional freedom technique. And so I went to the workshop, and I planned to stay just a couple of 3 days. But after the first morning, I called and canceled all my appointments and arranged to stay for the entire time he was there, about a week, because he was a master. And since that time, I've traveled to be and study with him many, many times and learned quite a bit. The integration methods that we use in acceptance and integration training were developed by Živorad Slavinsky. So I'd like to just take some time and do a demonstration because, it's interesting to hear about this work, but how many of you are clinicians? How many of you are in practice? Yeah, so let's see it in action because that's really where I think it comes alive a little bit. And what I'd like to do is demonstrate for you working with trauma using this method. It can be used for a lot of different things. Cornerstone is using it for addictions. People are using it for emotional overeating. My private practice, and I serve primarily healing arts professionals, issues associated with mood disorders. There's lots and lots of uses for this, but I want to focus on trauma. So, as a way of talking about this and to demonstrate this, I'd like to ask if one of you would be my person and let me work with you. And also assure you that you don't have to tell us anything about the trauma, that we can do the work without anybody knowing anything, myself included. I know it sounds like a magic trick, but it's really not. It's good work. So could I ask one of you to volunteer and let me help you? Yeah, come on up. So we're going to stand here. I hope that you guys can see us and hear us okay. What's your name?
I'm Lakin.
Hi, Lincoln.
Lakin, like a lake.
Nice to meet you. Lake, yeah. My favorite spots. So they can, like I said, you can tell us as little or as much as you want. It's entirely up to you. The way that I work, once I feel like I've got it, I will often interrupt my client because our time is precious, and if we have a solid relationship, let's pretend we've known each other for a really long time.
I feel like we have.
Okay, good. So, what would you like to address? Would you like to tell us anything, or you want to just get going?
I could choose 30,000 different situations, I guess. But
So pick one and
okay.
let it be a really charged one.
Okay.
Okay?
Do you want me to tell you that?
It's up to you.
Well, I go back to my car wreck I had 10 years ago,
Okay.
and the relationship beforehand, and then my life afterwards and stuff. So.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Good. So Lakin, as you think about that car wreck, there's likely 3 to 5 moments in time that are particularly awful. They kind of come up to you, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Good. So it's like a little video, right?
Mhm.
So as you look at that, and it may help to close your eyes. That's entirely up to you, and I can hold this for you if you want. Okay. Yeah. For now, you have to stand. For now. That's all right. We can sit for a minute. Okay. All right. So I'd like you to face me. Okay. Bring to mind those 3 to 6 moments. Close your eyes. And as you look at them now, choose the moment in time that's really the worst moment. Like, it was the worst one. Good. So feeling that moment as if it's happening now, not a moment before, not a moment after. Freeze frame it. So there's no movement. It's like a solid, frozen snapshot in time. Got it? And tell us what you're seeing in your mind's eye, if you want to.
I'm seeing the moment that after the car had flipped, and like I realized what was going on, and I looked down at my hand, and it didn't even look like a hand anymore.
Very,
I'm very vain. So.
You're very vain. Yeah.
Or I was.
That'll do it, right? Good. So you're seeing that. And are you inside your experience or the outside looking in? You're observing. And so just take note of from where you're observing. Okay? Now, as best you can, come back inside your experience. So you're looking at that moment from inside your point of view. Yeah? Good. And you can see the hand from inside. Yes. And what are you thinking in this moment as if it's happening now?
Well, I've come a long way since then, but.
So as best you can, take yourself into that moment as if it's happening right now, not here, not a moment before, not a moment after. That moment, your hand doesn't even look like a hand anymore. What are you thinking?
I thought that I was going to lose my whole hand or more, my body.
I'm going to lose my whole hand or more of my body, right? And what are you feeling emotionally?
Confusion. And just shock.
Shock, right. And what do you feel in your body?
Adrenaline.
Yes. And do you feel a slight sensation of the car and being in that physical space in the seat?
Yeah.
Very good. Take a breath. Just letting yourself experience it. Not a moment before, not a moment after. Now close the door on that, set that aside, and bring yourself to here and now, keeping your eyes closed. This room, this moment, you and me and our friends, our best friends. And tell me, what are you seeing in your mind's eye from this moment?
Just how much better my life has become since that moment. And
So make a snapshot of this room here. You may be thinking, yeah, you're thinking my mind is, it's better. Life is better, right?
I'm feeling calm.
Uh-huh.
Happy here.
Uh-huh.
Surrounded by a lot of people that I've known for 30 years. I've seen a long time. But I'm really trying to come to
Uh-huh.
calm.
So you can see the room. Do you have a sense of the room? Uh-huh. You feel calm. What else are you noticing in your body? Uh-huh. Feet on the floor, coolness of the air. Good. Take a breath. Now I'm going to walk behind you and turn you around halfway. Place my hands on your shoulders. Is that okay with you? Okay. Okay. Taking yourself back to the moment of the accident. Feel what you felt then, see what you saw, think what you thought, as if it's happening now. Take the index finger of your dominant hand. Imagine the snapshot in front of you. Take the index finger of your dominant hand, place it in the middle of that snapshot in front of you. Good. Now, with your eyes closed, estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the ceiling above you in this room. Yeah, like your best guesstimate. I feel you. That's all right. Just your best. The tip of your finger in the middle of the traumatic moment and the ceiling above you in this room. Okay, good. Now estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the floor below you in this room. Yeah, it can't be 50 because you're not 50 feet tall. So, sure, very good. Good. Perfect. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall to your right in this room. Perfect. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall to your left in this room. Perfect. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall in front of you in this room. Very good. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall behind you in this room. Very good. I'm going to place my hands on your shoulders. Keep your hand aloft. Take a breath. I'll turn you around. Okay. One more step. There you go. Sorry. You're good. So, and what happened to the trauma? And how does it feel now? It's distant. Yeah. Okay. Good. So better? Okay, good. So you can sit down now. You can open your eyes and you can sit down. Two things at once. I'm not good. You did great. So you said earlier that you, when you first looked at it, you were not inside your point of view. You were outside looking in. So this is one of the ways you can tell if someone has dissociated during a trauma. They're seeing it from the outside, they're observing it. So would it be okay with you to see if we can retrieve that aspect of yourself? Okay, all right. So it might help to close your eyes. Look back at the scene of the accident and the point from which you that point of view from which you originally saw this, yes? And as you look around there, see if you can discover if there's some aspect of your being. And sometimes to us it looks like almost like a holographic image of ourselves. Sometimes there's like a little ball of light or buzz or something that attracts our attention. Look around and make up with eyes closed. You decide.
I'm looking for me as the observer.
Sure. Yeah. She said, I'm looking for me as the observer. It is very meta. Got it? Very good. So you see this aspect of yourself, or sense this, yes. So I'd like you to approach this aspect. And is it he, she, it, or they? And ask her, how are you doing? You can do that inside. If there's anything to report, I'll ask you. And ask her what she needs, if she needs anything. Tell me what she says.
She needs to act.
Yes, yes, agreed. Ask her if she has any goals other than to get out of here. Is there anything else she wants to do or have? Safety, of course. Thank you. Tell her thank you. Anything else? A plan, yes. Tell her thank you. Anything else? Any other goals? Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank her and ask her if she's decided anything. If she's come to any conclusions about herself, about life, about others. Anything you would like to share? Why is she there? Yes, so she's confused, yes. So she'd like to know that for the accident. Anything else any other decisions or conclusions? Just why? Yeah. How are you feeling towards her? Yeah, a little tenderness? Okay. So I'd like you to, you know how you made a snapshot of the moment of the accident? I'd like you to make a snapshot of her there in that place. Got it? And tell me what you see in your mind's eye. Right. Right. And what are you, right, that, yes. And what are you feeling emotionally? Yes. And what do you feel? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that it took a long time to realize it's okay, but it does become better.
Good man, we'll see. And what are you feeling in your body? Yeah. And emotionally you feel like you want to help her, so there's that, like I said, tenderness or something like that. So let me take this for you. So I'd like you to make a snapshot of her there in that moment, not a moment before. There's the thought, you want to help her, the image, the emotion, the body sensation. Place 2 fingers, the index and the middle finger, underneath the left eyebrow. Left eyebrow. That's the other. Yes, your other left. So they take this hand here. Use this hand if it's better. So it's underneath the eyebrow, close to the bridge of the nose. So a little closer to the bridge of the nose. May I touch you? Okay. So it's like this. Yeah. So look down. No, honey, it's a little over. Yes. There you go. Perfect. You're doing good. Spatially, it's not easy. But you have the snapshot, and you feel a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of tenderness and care for her. She looks panicked and get me out of here. Take a breath. Feel this moment. Not a moment before, not a moment after. Good. Now change hands. 2 fingers underneath the right eyebrow, close to the bridge of the nose. Let the left one down. And it's just a little bit like this. So, yeah, there you go. And bring yourself to here and now and make a snapshot of this moment, just like you did a moment ago. But it'll be a little different this time, right? Because now you're in front of people. Then you see, tell me what you see in your mind's eye.
I see myself not really being able to
I see myself not being able to stick my fingers in the right position. You're doing fine. You got it. But so can you see the room? And what are you thinking at this moment? I can't see my fingers.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like I'm surrounded by people.
Feel good. Feel safe. I'm surrounded by like-minded people. Take a breath. And so you feel safe. Any other emotions? Yes. And body sensation. You can feel your feet on the chair. Take a breath. Change hands. Back to that other situation. And that other snapshot, is it stronger, weaker, or about the same as it was a moment ago?
I would say that my physical feeling is lesser.
Good. And the image, is it still as vivid? Good. So it's weakening. Take a little breath and experience this even as it's weakening. Change hands. And over here, the image and snapshot of this moment, is it stronger, weaker, about the same? Yeah. So just feel this moment, not a moment before, not a moment after, this moment. Beautiful. Change hands. Weaker or about the same as it was a moment ago? Very good. That's natural. It's what happens. So just let that continue to weaken even as you're experiencing it. Take another breath. Change hands. Weaker, about the same. Is the image still as vivid or is it softening? Yeah, that happens. So just let it continue to fade. Take a little breath. Change hands. there a thought there, Lakin, or is the thought space empty? So there's no image either. Body sensation, just normal present. What about that anxiety you were feeling? Good. So there's nothing there, it's just blank, right? Good. Take a breath. Change hands. Is there anything left in the image picture here? Or is it empty? Yeah. So feel that even as it's empty. Take a little breath. Is there a thought, or is the thought space empty? Good. Change hands. It's still empty, yes? Good. Take a little breath. Change hands. Is there anything left in the image picture? Does it feel the same as the other side? Change hands. Let's just check. Yeah, good. Okay, rest your hand down, keeping your eyes closed. Bring your attention to the pineal gland. And you guys can all do this if you want to. It's a nice little meditation. You can feel in the center of your head a small gland, like a small pea-sized sphere of light. Now imagine above your head a globe filled with light. As you inhale, draw light down from that globe into the pineal gland. Beautiful. As you exhale, fill the globe with light. As you inhale, the globe goes dark, the pineal gland goes bright. As you exhale, fill the globe with light. Breathe like that for just another moment or so, and I'll give you one more instruction. On your next exhalation, imagine a whole universe filled with light, in front and behind, above and below, to the right and left, all filled with light, like you're a star expanding light into forever. And as you inhale, the light in the universe goes dark and the pineal gland goes bright. As you exhale, the whole universe goes bright. Breathe like this for a few moments, and I'll let you know when it's enough. Allow your breathing to return to its own natural harmony. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. Yeah, like that. So how are you feeling about that car accident?
I'm feeling a sense of calmness about it that I haven't felt in a while. I mean, I always, I've accepted it, but I'm actually feeling pretty physiologically, I'm feeling okay when I think about it.
Good. Okay. So is it possible that the tension from that trauma can impose itself on you in the future against your will?
I mean, yeah, it's possible, but...
Under what circumstances? And listen to the question. Is it possible for it to impose itself on you in the future against
my will?
Yeah.
I don't want it to.
Sure. So that implies that there's a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So under what circumstance? When are you likely to get triggered by this?
When I'm riding with other people, when I'm not in control.
When someone else is driving,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. So I want you to make a snapshot of someone else driving and this tension from this trauma imposing itself on you again in the future. You got that?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So let's just do another quick. This is the quickest way, so we'll do that. So make a snapshot of someone else driving, right? Feel what you imagine feeling. See what you imagine seeing. Put yourself inside your point of view, so you're not observing it. Great. Okay. That's also something interesting that happens is it's much more easy to come inside the point of view once you do this. So inside your point of view, yes. And tell us what you see in your mind's eye.
I see myself fake braking, basically.
So you see your feet, but you're inside your perspective.
I'm inside, yeah, and
Right.
I can feel myself holding the side and,
Great. And you feel the sensation of the car.
Mhm.
Any other body sensations?
I'm feeling a little tense.
Yeah, and emotion?
I don't want to say fear, but
Anxiety?
nervousness, yeah.
Worry, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And what are you thinking?
That I should have drove.
I should have driven, yeah, I should have driven. Right, and so, and you see the inside of the car and your feet fake braking. Good. Take a little breath. Set that aside. Come to here and now, you and me in this room with our friends, right? All trying to figure out how to do this thing of helping people. Yep. What are you thinking in this moment?
I'm thinking that I'm happy to be here.
And what do you see in your mind's eye?
I see a room full of people.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Me in front of you.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what do you feel emotionally?
Okay.
Good. Like calm, easy.
Mhm. Yeah.
And in your body?
Feel great.
Feet on the floor, sensation of the earth. Great. I'm going to walk behind you and place my hands on your shoulders and turn you around. Is that okay? Now, bring to mind that snapshot in the future when someone else is driving, you're not in control, and holy cow, you got a break. Feel what you felt, see what you saw, place that snapshot in front of you. Take the index finger of your dominant hand, place it in the middle of the snapshot in front of you. Very good. Now estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment in the future and the ceiling above you in this room. Very good. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment in the future and the wall in front of you in this room. Perfect. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment in the future and the wall behind you in this room. Perfect. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the floor below you in this room. Very good. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment in the future and the wall to your right in this room. Very good. And the wall to your left in this room. Good. Take a breath. Keep your hand aloft. I'm going to turn you around again. And what happened to it? The trauma in the future. So when you think about that, so yes. So what do you feel when you think about the future now? Is it possible that that anxiety and trauma can trigger you again in the future against your will? Okay, so you didn't bring it with you, so let's come back around. Okay. Place your finger in the middle of that snapshot. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment in the future and the ceiling above you in this room. Good. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment in the future and the floor below you in this room. Perfect. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment in the future and the wall to your right in this room. Very good. And the wall to your left in this room. Perfect. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment in the future and the wall in front of you in this room here now. Good. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment in the future and the wall behind you in this room here now. Perfect. Take a breath. Keep your hand aloft. Good. Okay. So what happens to that trauma from the future? Is it possible for that same trigger to activate you in the future against your will? Do you feel a need to forgive or for forgiveness? Okay, let's take a seat. So closing your eyes. Often when we feel a need to forgive, Lakin, it's right there. The feeling is right there. Can you feel forgiveness? Yeah. So first, just allow yourself to forgive yourself. Like reaching through time, I forgive you. That younger part of you who did the very best she knew how. And like a blossom dropped into a still pool of water, allow that forgiveness to expand and include any other beings who may have anything to do with this difficult And allow that forgiveness to reach back through time and space, forgiving the car builders, anyone at all the circumstances and cultural norms that contributed to that one moment. Allow that forgiveness to expand even further to include life. God, if you're understanding, for creating a world where people experience difficulties from time to time. And taking all the time you like, whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, thank you. So, before we open it, can somebody tell me what time it is? 11:27. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. So before we open it up, I just want to give you a chance if there's anything you want to say about your experience.
I feel really calm. I feel like I've felt 1,000 emotions in the last 5 minutes. Yeah. But I'm feeling okay in this moment. Mm-hmm.
And how do you feel about feeling okay?
I'm okay with it. I feel good. Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else you want to share?
I mean, it was interesting. I mean, I've not done something like that before.
Most of us have.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like a roller coaster, but it led to a good, I can feel good now. I'm feeling good.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
How about this? Before I let her go, do you have any questions for Lakin? Okay. Thank you. Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I agree. Incredibly brave and patient. Patient to try something new and to go through this together. But questions, answers, let's have a little conversation. Objections? Yeah.
When you ask that question, is the pain, can it go against your will in the future? What's the objective behind, what are you assessing there or wanting to see in their answer?
Well, I'm wanting to see an absolutely no. Because the first round, it was, yeah, of course it could. It probably could. And so the second round, what we do is we go ahead and clear the future. The psyche doesn't know the difference between something we've experienced in real life and something we've experienced in our imagination, in the manifest world of imagination. So if we make a snapshot of that future event happening that Lakin was sure would happen, and we go ahead and depotentiate, deactivate the charge associated with that, then we can be assured that she's really not so likely to get that easily triggered again. So that's what we're looking for, an absolute no. Yeah. It is important to feel safe in the present moment because so the polarities that you're using space and time to isolate the here and now from the there and then. So we've got the polarity of space and time, here and now, and there and then. If in the here and now, Lakin didn't feel safe, she didn't feel like she could trust the environment, or for whatever reason, it would not be a strong enough polarity to integrate the traumatic event. If she didn't with me at this time, well, I'm trying to think if that happened, because I typically don't do this until if we have collaborative agreement. Like we agree this is what we're going to work on. But with someone who has like multiple microaggressions or multiple traumas and safety is a concern, then that relationship is going to what? And when someone tells me in the here and now, I do not feel safe, open your eyes. We're here right now. And that happens actually. People do say, I don't feel you were there and then. So we really get them right here, right now. Feel your feet on the floor. I'll have them bounce. Feel your feet bounce and feel your body move. That'll get you here and now. Look around so you orient to now, hopefully to anchor that safety in. And that safety has to be anchored to the collaborative relationship. Yeah.
How
that. Well, in an hour, we would go on to something else. Because as Lakin said, I feel like I've gone through so many emotions in just the last 5 minutes. It's true. But the way that we work is, let's say this was one trauma, and she feels great, but you know, I got this meeting coming up and I'm a little anxious about it. We get to work, we just keep working for the hour. So this was an hour. And Lakin, I don't know where you are, but so if you could email me or touch base with me, because I would like to follow up and just make sure, I mean, do the same thing, direct your awareness. Did you get the gain we aimed for? Okay, that's an important part of this. Yeah.
Two things, the standing part and the sitting part are really what you would do in the office, not just in this room, right?
Yes.
And secondly, I get what you're doing with the finger and the estimated distance, but in her mind, is she actually thinking numbers, or is she trying to move her finger some way? What is she supposed to do with that?
Most often, yeah. So most often they don't move their fingers. It's a fix. And one of the reasons I touch this is it sort of anchors to the photograph, the snapshot, right? So you're not moving your fingers. You're really estimating. And that's really, it doesn't matter almost what they say, you know, except when someone says the ceiling is like, right, the ceiling is 6 feet down. Like if it's right up against them, which goes to your question about safety, if it's right up against them, the trauma is too close to them, so they can't get away from it. You know, so then we have to do a little work to get a little bit more, even inches away from them. Yeah.
So for patients that have a difficult time with somatic experience,
Yeah.
Patients who feel very triggered being present in their bodies, or patients that have a hard time labeling what they're feeling and experiencing, is there ever like a period of like psychoed where you talk about like, here's how to describe feelings in your body, here's what emotion is what corresponding to? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I understand where you're coming from, and in my early training I was right with you on that. Where I am at this point in my life is no, not necessarily. Someone will tell me, I'm feeling like, they'll say, I'm feeling like this is going to go on forever. I might accept that as a feeling even though it's a thought, because it has a context for them. So I don't use the time to psychoeducate them to distinguish between. In terms of body awareness, then I'll say, yeah, so I'll bounce, feel your chest, notice your belly, feel your hands, like point to different body points. I'll hand them a pencil, feel the pencil, you know, feel how heavy it is, drop it, now feel. So that'll bring awareness to the body, and that's about the extent of it. Yeah.
Just a comment, and maybe you can address when you were having her press on the inside of different sides of her bridge of her nose. That seems like that was bilateral stimulation, very similar to EMDR.
Yes.
And so, is this technique associated with EMDR at all?
No, I wouldn't say that. I've trained several EMDR people and a couple of EMDR trainers, and what they say is that EMDR is like a comfortable SUV. It'll get you where you're going, and this is more like a spaceship or a teleporter, and you're there really quick. I took a course with Janine Shapiro probably 30 years ago, 25 years ago or so, and when EMDR was first getting started, the only similarity I would say is the aspect of duality. So sometimes it looks like bilateral stimulation with this model as well. But just to take it a little step further, why we're using, you only saw me use 2 points. We'll use 6 points, and it's not even pressing, it's light touch. The reason that we're using this point while we're focused on some psychological experience is that the energy tends to flush through more quickly when we touch these acupressure points. This is the end point for the bladder meridian. So what does the bladder do? Eliminates toxins, right? And this is the end point for triple warmer and stomach. So it has to do with helping clients digest and integrate their emotional experience more quickly. If, like you said, Lakin, you felt like you were experiencing 1,000 emotions in 5 minutes. It really does flush emotional energy through more quickly than just feeling it and describing it. Yes?
Do you ever run into any difficulty when you get with clients with the forgiveness aspect of what you do? It
So
seems to me with my work, a lot of clients have a whole different idea of what forgiveness means to them, and I was wondering if you could touch on that a little bit.
I haven't to date. I mean, because the question is pretty respectful. It's either you feel a need or you don't. And then when there's that need, there is, like I checked with you, like, and there's this feeling of forgiveness. It's just there when the need is there. So then I just, like, I was a boatman on the Colorado, so it's like you just rolling over into that little current of forgiveness and then letting that do its work. If there's no need, there's no need. There's no harm, no foul. Yeah. Yes.
Can you work with a memory, or can you work with something that is a trauma before conscious memory within the family story, that has a vivid imagination of what happened, but it's not remembered?
So the question, let me make sure I understand your question. The question is, can you work with a memory that's not a real memory, it's a family story that has charge to it? Yes, you can work with that, yes. Any other questions, comments, observations, objections about what you saw, about the principles? Yeah?
How about when it's not discrete trauma, somebody that's grown up in a
Right. Microaggressive traumas, like that, yes. So what's interesting with this is that with microaggressive traumas, it's going to take more work than a single. But there's this principle, I mean, some of this work is built on quantum physics. So there's this principle in quantum physics, if you want to study a wave, you have to break it into a particle, right? Is that familiar to you guys? So how that applies to us as psychotherapists is if you want to address the microaggressions of a bunch of traumas, then you break it into like finding the 3 to 5 worst moments, and then you go from the earliest to the latest and kind of work backwards from there. It's pretty effective even with microaggressive. It just takes a little bit longer. Yeah. Yes?
Have you ever done this work with DID clients?
I have. And, pardon me? It takes longer with DID because if you think about, so the dissociated aspect, with Lacan, it was pretty straightforward, right? But let's say with a DID client, when you start engaging in that conversation, I don't want to come hang out with you. I mean, there can be some hesitancy to integrating, right? So those conversations about, we're looking at 2 primary things. What's that dissociated aspects? What are her goals or his goals or their goals? What are their decisions? And so with DID, those aspects can be more less permeable in some ways. And so those conversations about decisions and goals take a little longer. And it takes a little longer for the conversation about, well, I don't know how I feel about your decision, and kind of accepting that as so it just takes longer. But that's not my focus in my private practice anymore. Done it, but don't do it anymore. Yeah. Right? I agree with you. I mean, I've been practicing, I wonder how can anything to do with trauma be this straightforward? I mean, I agree with you. When I first started studying with Zivarad and started learning about polarities and the power of integration and how quickly it could dismantle psychological tension, yeah, I agree with you. It's surprising that it can be this straightforward. And like I said, I want to follow up just to make sure, right? Yeah, I agree with you. It is surprising. Anything else about that? Yeah. It's surprising, right? Anybody else surprised? Yeah.
What age range do you recommend?
Excuse me?
What age range do you recommend that this for?
So I work with adults. The question is what age range. The youngest that one of my clients has done this with is a 4-year-old. One of my students, not my clients, one of my students. I don't work with kids. But the youngest has been 4, which is amazing. Yeah.
What is, I guess, the proximity to the trauma? Like, is there any sort of criteria for timeline? Is it like this was specifically several years ago? Have you ever worked with someone like this?
Yeah, so the question is about timeline. The quickest was the Gatlinburg fires, right after that, yeah. And then when Katrina happened and we had folks in the convention center or wherever they were, I can't remember now, but I worked with people there about their trauma. Pretty immediate, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
wondering about triggers, and I was thinking about the one that we talked about at first, because I have a client that was shot and mass shooting situation. And so every mass shooting.
Every mass shooting uses a trigger, yes?
And I can't imagine how we move out of that.
So the idea is, I talked about integration. So what we're doing here is we're integrating here and now with there and then, and isolating space and time to do that. So if, with triggers like fireworks, when cars backfire, when that happens, news, all of those things, we just take those and treat it as a current trauma that hasn't happened yet. And then when we treat the future trauma as a current trauma that hasn't happened yet, like Lakin shouldn't have any problem. In gunshot violent victims typically don't have any problem. Yeah.
Other than ethics studies, different populations,
Yeah, it's in the works, but not yet. The foundations of those studies are there in energy psychology and in the emotional freedom technique world. The foundations are there talking specifically about the use of these eye points. But in terms of what you've seen in isolating here and now, that work is in the works, but we are on the edge of that, so I have to say no. Foundations are there.
does it have a theoretical framework that's based on the relational theory?
Well, my background is in hypnosis, Gestalt, and transactional analysis, and studying with Giverod and self-acceptance training. And my mentor in self-acceptance training was Dick Galney, and he studied with Fritz Perls and Eric Byrne, and Alan Watts was his friend. So that area is the theoretical foundation. It's an emerging model. It's something that's happening. Yes?
If there's been a period of time of trauma, like in childhood abuse, it went on for a period of time, and they've got multiple memories, is it necessary to go through each of those significant memories, or can it kind of be cleared in one of these treatments?
It's similar to the question that, like, if there's multiple traumas, typically you're going to have to go to, it's going to be deeper work. And you're also going to be doing integration work with the perpetrator, because with multiple traumas, there's one or two singular perpetrators, so that's another layer of work that we didn't have here. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we move on? Objections? Curiosities? Yeah.
Some of the technical stuff, you were always thinking counterclockwise. Is that, have you experimented?
I've experimented with clockwise, and there's another way you can use this technique for clockwise, but it doesn't work as well. And I really would discourage you guys from just trying this. It just takes a little bit more. There's a lot going on that you miss in a demonstration like this. This is not meant to train you in how to do this. It's really meant just to introduce you to, like you said, this is surprising that you can do something like this quickly. So let's talk just a few minutes about a couple of techniques you can use to help clients orient to now. First of all, with trauma clients, I really encourage you, when you're giving meditation instructions or anything associated like that, have them have their eyes open. That it's very confusing and disorienting for trauma clients to have their eyes closed when they're doing any of these things until they get much, much more comfortable in spacious consciousness or quiet consciousness. So the first thing is noticing practice. And you guys, you can do this now. It's just if you're moving your papers, just take a moment to feel the texture of the paper. Feel the weight. Pick up objects, put them down. It's a kind of mindful, before mindful awareness was really a thing, my teacher Dick Galney used to call it noticing practice, where you just allow your eyes to be soft and let them just notice, as if you're an artist and you're just finding outlines. And you're just noticing the colors, noticing the textures, noticing weights, using an easy breath, just experiencing the sounds, the temperature, using the five senses, in other words, to orient to right now. That makes sense, right? That's not unusual. The second one that I really like, and do you guys want me to just lead you through this? This is a little meditation. Do you want to do that? Yeah? Okay. Eyes open if you want. And just imagine, just wherever you are, however you're sitting, you can readjust your posture at any moment. But just imagine that there are roots growing from the soles of your feet and the base of your spine. And imagine these roots reach down through the carpet, through the foundation of the building, into the rich, dark soil. And imagine the roots are at least as wide as your body, and at least 3 times deep into the soil. And if you like, you can imagine the roots growing all the way down to the center of the earth, as far and deep and wide as you like. Now, imagine, just like the earth gives its great restorative power and energy to the planet, to trees, when a forest burns, new sprouts come up. Imagine the earth restoring and replenishing you with its great restorative energy. Imagine this energy sort of entering the roots of your own system, up through the rich, dark earth, up through the foundation of the building, up through the carpet, and entering the soles of your feet and your tailbone. Feel this energy as best you can. It'll be good enough. Feel this energy mingling with your own body energy. Now bring your attention to the center of the head, to the pineal gland, and imagine, if you will, a beam of light coming from the pineal gland, opening up about the width of your body, and soaring above your head, above the ceiling, through the floors above us, through the roof of the building. Imagine this beam of light moving up through the tree line into the upper atmosphere. And like a beam of light, a stream of light flowing into the darkness of space to reconnect with your own light source. And as if God's fingertips, if that's your light source, drips light down into this stream, imagine this stream of light streaming back through the darkness of space, through the upper atmosphere, through the tree line, the roof, the spaces above the spaces, until once again it pours down into the top of your head, mingling with the earth energy, your own energy. And just imagine it forms a kind of cocoon around you. Just a little luminous cocoon of earth energy, this light source, and you held in this luminous cocoon. Protected, secure, safe. All the space from the edge of your skin to the edge of the cocoon filled up with light. And just take a couple of easy breaths like that. And as you're ready, you can gradually and gently open your eyes slowly, like the sun coming over the horizon in the morning. Quick aside about that, and eyes opening after you lead clients in meditative experiences like this. If your clients have a tendency to be, it's fairly easy for them to enter light trance, and they open their eyes really quickly, then sometimes they'll get a headache. So it's a phenomenon that happens in hypnosis. It's a little bit like psychological bends. You go into these deep states, and then if you pop too quickly, if we go down deep in scuba diving, and you come up too quickly, it's not good for your body. In the same way, if you've been in a really deep, a different state of awareness through one of these processes, you open your eyes too quickly, it can induce a headache. So if that happens, no harm, no foul. Ask your client to close their eyes again and rest for a little bit, and then instruct them to gradually, really, really slowly, super slowly, like the sun coming over the mountains in the morning, really slowly ask them to open their eyes. And it'll be like a shade drawing up, and that typically takes care of it. Okay, so the third process that I use to help clients orient to now is alternate nostril breathing. How many of you know that? A few of you, good. Yeah, this is a super easy technique and it's so kinesthetic. Lots of clients like it. You'll want to have tissue near you because the nostrils tend to drain. So what you do with alternate nostril breathing is you make a little Y with your hand, place the thumb on one nostril, and inhale through that to the count of 4 to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Close it, hold your breath, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then out the other nostril. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's try that. So inhale. Hold it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll do one more round. Inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do any of you ever use that to help your clients kind of get back to present? One person, yeah. It's really useful and it's so easy, and people can really find themselves like, okay, it just disrupts whatever energy was going on. So even without acceptance and integration training, this alone is really helpful to clients. And it's also helpful, like if you find like your work is stalling, you're in the middle of a session and you're just stalling somehow, you can use this and it'll help you and your client get back on track. So any questions about these noticing practice, the rooting, or alternate nostril breathing? Okay. So, let me see what time it is. 5 minutes, good. Okay. So I wanted to just, since I had a few minutes, and this area of non-dual awareness is so unusual for us, and your question about the efficacy and the evidence-based, finding evidence for this work, there's work being done in non-dual awareness in our field, and I just wanted to introduce you to one of the people doing this work, Zoran Josipovich. And how he describes non-dual awareness is, when I first read this, it took me several readings to kind of like, what? But essentially what he's saying is the same thing, that there's no subject and object in non-dual awareness. There's just a sense of beingness or suchness or isness. And that's a really different state for most of our clients. And as a state in itself, it's a healing state. Even if you have 5 seconds where there's nothing, you know? Like in Lacan's work, it wasn't very long. But you heard her say it's just blank. There's nothing there, right? Now, if the question of if I'm in my office, I might expand that state a little bit. I might give her a little more time with it. I might poke it to see how comfortable is she in that state, to see if I can disrupt it. So I might do that if there's more time. All right. Any other questions, comments, objections, observations? Okay. So a couple of things that I'd suggest in terms of if this work is of interest to you. There's a couple of ways you can keep going with it. You can join our Facebook community, AAIT.community should take you right to the Facebook page. You can join that community. I do some writing in there and talk about this work. You can deepen your learning by joining us for AAIT Foundations. Locally, that's going to be a while, frankly. Our next places, our next locations are next year, well, February it will be in Chicago, Boulder, and Louisiana is next winter. And locally, there may be an opportunity in June. I may do a pop-up workshop. Several people have asked me to. So if that's of interest to you, then you should let me know, because I probably went to that one again. And let's see, Chicago, Louisiana, Colorado, those are the places where you can continue learning for next year. You could apply for the fellowship training group. That's an immersive program. As you can see, this work, it takes a while to really grok the paradigm shift. stop looking to the narrative for transformation, and that takes a while. And learning all of the tools associated with this model take a while. So the fellowship training group is a 10-month, 11-month program for participants, and we meet and just deep dive work for all that through those several months. So you can apply for that group. And just continue the conversation. Meet me for lunch. Ask me questions. I'm really pleased that locally so many people are now trained. If you're interested and you want to experience it, there's several practitioners trained in our community who could help you and give you an opportunity to experience AAIT. Thank you all very much for your time.